Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Mr. President.
See, we received notice that the White House has this great chandelier polisher that does just spectacular work.
I usually get in early to get started, and sometimes I stay late to finish up.
The American people need to see that there's no money in the budget for all of this.
It looks like some Reaganomics will be necessary. She's been trying to fight inflation, but
I really appreciate you, and not just for what you do.
Thank you for not commenting. We don't pay you for that.
And I won't forget you each time I see that dog. I'll know you from here on out.
Thanks.
Steve, there's word that the Washington Post and some photographers are coming down to feature you in a book.
I want you to be very careful. Don't fall off those ladders and things.
I'm not afraid of heights, no way. I'm on my way up the ladder.
I'm so thrilled and honored to be here tonight with the production team of the White House Chandeliers. We have with us writer Lynetta Stevens, producer Mr. Adiyb Muhammad, director Ms. Joycelene Fadlelmola, and the man himself, Mr. Stewart Stevens. Thank you so much for having Good Things DC. I am excited and honored to be joined today by writer Lynetta Stevens, director Joycelene Fadlelmola, producer Adiyb Muhammad, and the man himself, Mr. Stewart Calvin Stevens. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for welcoming Good Things DC.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So let's jump right in. Tell me, what was the inspiration behind telling the story of Mr. Stevens and the White House Chandeliers?
The inspiration for behind telling the story for Mr. Stevens was to familiarize people with his story, was to get his story out. Although we have many other historians that people have written about and read about, we'd like for Mr. Stevens to know his story, for others to know his story while he's still a living legend. And it's all about history, nothing political.
I love that you would like to share this story while he is still around to see the impact.
Yes,
that's
while
wonderful.
I am and while he is, yes.
Awesome. So what has been the most challenging part of bringing this story to life?
The most challenging part to bringing it to life was just getting it out and getting the story out and interacting with a lot of different venues and different people. It was nothing really much of a challenge for me, though. It was very, very rewarding for me, not challenging too
That's
much.
a blessing.
Not too challenging.
That's awesome. Mr. Stevens, can I ask you, are you looking forward to seeing your story in action and live on stage?
Yes, I am. I would love to see it in action on stage.
Wonderful. And how about you, Mr. Adiyb? What are you hoping the audience remembers most about this show?
Well, what I hope they remember the most about this show is this man's story. How impactful his life was for not only him, but for his family in particular. It's like when you look at different stories and you look at the heroes, he's one of the heroes that people need to know about that you don't really hear a great deal about. So that's the story.
I think the new coin term for that is the hidden figure. So
The
he's a hidden figure.
Yes, indeed.
Love that.
Wonderful.
Miss Joycelene, is there
Yes.
anything in this show that you think will surprise people?
Oh yes,
Definitely.
yes.
Do
the fact
tell.
the fact that it got made. No, just kidding. The wonderful thing about it is that they were able to recreate some of the history of over 40 years between Mr. Stevens and his wife. So right before their eyes, the audience will be able to see history such as not only the presidents that he worked under, Clinton, Nixon, Reagan, Carter, but they'll also be reminded of, unfortunately, the assassination of Martin Luther King. And I'm hoping that, you know, people my age, of course, we remember all of that, but we're hoping that they bring their children and their grandchildren to this play, because many of them only, you know, get to read about it, but when you see it recreated on stage, it's going to make a bigger difference. So the challenge is to make sure that we bring the history to life on stage for just a short period of time, but make it memorable.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. And Miss Lynetta, why is it so important to you that this story be brought to the stage?
Well, it's really important to me that it's brought to the stage, so that because it was a book before it was a play. And also because I would like to, in remembrance of my mother, who was by my dad's side, or basically backing him. And he could not have done the job that he was doing had it not been for her to keep the home front going with us, as well as the overtime that he worked, which wasn't really his position of hire. However, it was a time that he put his time in and had a lot of time to meet ambassadors and people and big people, as well as get to familiarize, and even knew the butler for 25 years working at the state dinners, and also has postcards by this man too. So they had a good rapport, but my dad did his overtime to afford the time for my mom to stay home with us. So it's very important for me, being that this is her mom that she transitioned in. It's very important for my dad that he's still here, and for my brothers and sisters and family that we live.
It's such a beautiful way to honor her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to chime in on that point, because for me as a producer and wanting to tell stories that are impactful, that make an audience feel, one of the things that I think they're really going to be touched by is the relationship between Mr. Stevens and his wife. Mr. Stevens and his wife. Because it was a time, a different time, and it was a demonstration that these young people, in my opinion, could see love in action in the many years that they were together. So that speaks to a whole different tone.
So decades of a love story that's encompassed in this play.
Yes.
Love that. So as we know, this story follows the life of Mr. Stevens, as well as taking the audience through many iconic and historical events throughout our nation. Is there any scene or moment that you feel especially poignant, or perhaps speaks to some of the issues that this country is facing today?
Yes. For me, I like a moment in the play that after the assassination of Martin Luther King, they had the riots. Now, I'm not from this area. I was in Texas, but of course when I came here, I was told about how this area changed in the 60s after the riots. And in the play, she made sure that it was stated that the Black Renaissance, the place where the entertainment and the theaters and all that was destroyed. And so it is important to understand that through gentrification that we're going through today, our neighborhoods are being destroyed. So we're losing that connection of community, the Black businesses, the connections that we've had in the past, and we're losing it now today. So even though you guys had it in the 40s and 50s and you lost it in the 60s, and trying to generate a new community, now you're losing it through gentrification. So now it looks like you're reliving it, not through the riots, but through economic changes. So I think that, everything comes back around. It's just coming back in a different way, but we're still facing those challenges.
So that'll be really relevant to today's audience.
Right.
And for me, one of the things that I observed as part of the performance is the period of time when Mr. Stevens and his moms went to a store, and the way they were received or not received. I don't want to give away the plot, but it's certain things that happened at that time that really speak to the way some people think today. Because we talk about a lot of things in terms of the increase in racism, if you will. And see, one of the things that stand out for me was the fact that when he first came home, he wanted to be an African-American police officer at a time when DC wasn't hiring Black folks.
Wow.
So it's so many things within this story, within that time, within this history that's relevant, that young people need to see, so they can kind of get a sense that it hasn't always been as easy as it is, even in the context of still some of the issues that are going on.
Well, what I would like to say is that I can appreciate that none of the presidents treated him any differently.
Right.
And they respected him. So that lets you know that we can be respected, even by presidents. And that's what he did under the 7 he worked under. So it was in the golden era. That's all I can say.
So a little bit of turmoil, but some hope
Great
kind
deal of
of
hope.
weaved in there.
Yes.
Awesome. Mr. Stevens, I have been just itching to ask you this question. Have you shared any of your polishing secrets with anybody?
No, not really. I've been asked a lot of times, but I really haven't shared nothing with
We
anybody.
might have to patent that,
We
Jay.
just talked about that a few minutes ago. QVC,
Yes, ma'am.
you know, we're gonna package that. You know, he's the marketing guy. Infomercials, we can handle that, man. We can handle that.
fine.
Okay,
That's fine.
all right.
Yeah.
Millionaire, I see millionaire already.
Yeah, I love that.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I want to tell you guys, it has been such a pleasure. Before we close this out, I'd like for Miss Lynetta to tell our viewers where they can purchase tickets and get more information about the White House Chandeliers.
Sure, you may get information for purchasing tickets at https://whchandeliers.eventbrite.com.
Okay, so
Hurry
that's
up, they're selling fast. Hurry up.
chandeliers.eventbrite.com. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you for having us.